Nicholas is getting married, so come to the wedding." My husband, Dylan, called me after a long time, his voice cold as he said that. After all that he and our son Nicholas did to me, how can he be so arrogant? Honestly, I don't get it. But if I don't do something now, I'll continue to be looked down upon by Dylan and Nicholas. I can't stand that. I remember when I was younger, I helped Dylan when he was being bullied. I worked multiple part-time jobs to scrape together the money for Nicholas's tutoring fees. I managed all the household chores and kept up with the neighbors, all for them. But I guess they don't appreciate anything I've done. Their terrible treatment woke me up. I'm being ridiculed by them. The only person who can help me is me. I decided to attend Nicholas's wedding. My name is Jody, a 43-year-old housewife, married with a husband and a son. We live as a family of 3 and it's fairly enjoyable. My husband's name is Dylan, my son's name is Nicholas. I used to make lunch boxes for them every day and worked part-time in between house chores. The place where I work part-time operates during the day and night. It's a lunch spot by day and a snack bar by night. Actually, I've been working at this place since my youth, and after graduating high school, I was a full-time employee working the floor. After getting married and having Nicholas, I switched to part-time, working only during the day. Today, like always, I went to my part-time job, still in charge of the hall. But I enjoy talking directly with the customers, and the boss personally told me I'm well suited for it, so I feel like I belong. That's why I'm satisfied with my current situation. "Welcome! Oh!" I quickly greeted the customer who came in, but then I realized something. Yes, the customers were the neighborhood aunties. "Thank you for coming. Let me show you to your table. I have a good rapport with these ladies." I led them to their table and handed them a menu. They each ordered a parfait. "Anything else for you today?" When I asked them that, one of them opened her mouth to speak. The content of her response was about the personalities of Dylan and Nicholas. She couldn't fathom how, with me being so cheerful, Dylan and Nicholas were so calm. Her comment stirred agreement among the others, causing a stir in my heart. But I knew getting upset here wasn't right, so I calmly answered their curiosity. "It's really a mystery, isn't it? But Dylan and Nicholas, unlike me, are really smart. I'm just glad Nicholas didn't inherit my silliness. I think about that every day." The ladies burst into laughter at my remark, looking thoroughly pleased. They enjoyed their parfaits with gusto. But there was something that troubled me deeply. It was a point made by them. Indeed, I am very different from Dylan and Nicholas, but somehow, as if by a playful twist of fate, I ended up meeting Dylan that day, in this restaurant. At the same time, a year had passed since I finished high school, and I was getting used to the job. It was then I noticed Dylan, a customer at the time, being bullied by his senior colleagues from work. They were forcing him to drink strong alcohol as part of a prank. I couldn't stand it and pretended to take their order to approach the table. "Recently, we had to call an ambulance for a customer who got acute alcohol poisoning from such pranks. It's a hassle for us as a restaurant, so please don't do that in our establishment." My firm stance seemed to overwhelm them, and they reflected on their actions and apparently never did such a thing again. I know this because Dylan came to the restaurant alone later and told me about it. "You really saved me that day. I came to eat here today as a way to thank you. Can you recommend something?" That was how Dylan and I met. He started visiting the restaurant frequently, and we exchanged contact details. After a few dates, we started a relationship and eventually got married. As a side note, my outburst was witnessed by the current president, Sean, who was the manager of the restaurant at the time. Sean, always a generous soul, praised me instead of scolding me. Even now, as the president, he frequently visits the shop and chats casually. I was content with both my family and work life, truly enjoying every day. That is, until that incident happened. One day, I opened Dylan and Nicholas's lunchboxes to wash them. "Huh? They haven't touched a single bite. What's going on?" To my surprise, the contents were untouched, exactly as I had packed them in the morning. It was unusual for them to leave their lunch uneaten, and my mind buzzed with confusion. I tried to rationalize with my limited understanding. Dylan must have been too busy to eat, and Nicholas probably wasn't feeling well enough to eat. That must be it. I called out to the two of them in the living room. "Hey, about today's lunchbox, The lunchbox. As soon as I mentioned the word lunchbox in front of them, for some reason, both of them retreated into their rooms. I couldn't understand why. This pattern continued. They left their lunch untouched, and whenever I tried to talk about it, they would lock themselves in their rooms. These repeated incidents left me in shock, feeling upset without understanding the cause. But making lunchboxes was my way of showing love, so I never stopped. Neither did they stop their strange behavior. Unbeknownst to me, this probably caused me a lot of stress. The stress weakened my immune system, and I caught a terrible cold. I was originally supposed to go to work, but I had to call in sick. The manager was quite surprised, but I was able to take the day off. The reason the manager was surprised was that I had never taken a day off before. I had never taken a day off due to illness before, almost exemplifying the saying, "A born fool never changes." I had a fever, a headache, lots of coughing, a runny nose, and felt extremely lethargic. I took some cold medicine and decided to sleep in the middle of the day for recovery. Hopefully I'll be better by tomorrow. With that thought, I drifted off to sleep. As night fell, I was awakened by the voices of Dylan and Nicholas. "I'm hungry. Is dinner ready yet?" They both seemed to be hungry, but I still wasn't feeling well and doubted if I could cook. "I'm sorry, I might not be able to cook. I'm not feeling well," I answered weakly. Then they said something unbelievable. "You know I can't cook, right? Why would you say that? A housewife's job is to cook, so make something." They were relentless, even seeing me in this condition. I managed to prepare a simple meal. Dylan then complained. "This is pretty half-hearted," he grumbled while eating. I returned to bed wondering, were they always like this? Somehow I recovered in a day and returned to my part-time job. My coworkers were happy to see me back, which made me feel good. I was grateful to be working. I truly felt that way. The lively people at the shop listened to me and engaged in real conversations. I was deeply thankful for such simple things. Honestly, looking at it objectively, it was a bizarre situation. Why was I feeling this way? The problem lay at home. For some reason, recently, Dylan and Nicholas had been ignoring me. I had no idea why. But in my own way, as best I could, I thought about it. I decided to try talking to them again. Just waiting wouldn't change anything, and things couldn't stay like this. So I took action. I spent the entire day trying to talk to Dylan and Nicholas. There was no response from them, but I kept at it, undeterred. However, they ended up going to bed without responding. No luck on the first day. I was honestly shocked. I continued this approach, but the result was the same. For a whole month, they continued to ignore me. I felt deeply hurt and reached a point where I could no longer trust them. And then I realized something, that continuing like this would only lead to me feeling sorry for myself. So I started to fight back. First, I stopped making lunchboxes for Dylan and Nicholas. Although the ignoring lessened, they kept leaving their lunchboxes untouched as a form of harassment. I had reached my limit and stopped making lunchboxes, something I had never skipped before. It took courage to stop, but I couldn't stand being hurt anymore. Surprisingly, I even started to feel relieved that I didn't have to go to the trouble of making lunchboxes anymore. It's hard to believe now that I once put so much love and effort into making them. Of course, Dylan and Nicholas quickly noticed the change. They're quick to sense anything that's a disadvantage to them. It's really frustrating. I can't understand why they can't use that perceptiveness to avoid hurting me. It's just sad. Nicholas said, "What about the lunchbox?" "You don't eat it anyway, right? I'm not making them anymore," I replied firmly. They didn't seem to like my response and left for their respective work and school, visibly irritated. Serves you right. Before I knew it, I found myself saying those words to them. Perhaps because I stopped making their lunches, Dylan and Nicholas began to ignore me again. This time, the atmosphere was even more tense and unbearable. If they wanted the lunch so much, they shouldn't have left it uneaten. While seething inwardly, I was planning my next move. It was a plan to leave the house. By this point, I had grown to deeply despise them, and I didn't care anymore. They neither apologized nor showed any signs of stopping their cold treatment. I reached my breaking point and put my plan into action. My suitcase rolled smoothly on the concrete road. Yes, I had finally run away from home, and from today, this place becomes my new home. I rented an apartment suitable for living alone and began my life there. 1 week into enjoying my solitary life, my mobile phone rang. It was Dylan. I answered, and his voice sounded unusually frantic. Please come back home. Dylan was begging me to return. Apparently, they were incapable of managing household chores and had finally realized my worth. I had received no contact from them for a week, and I understood my significance to them. I was unswayed. You two should learn to work together. Consider this a punishment for the harassment you gave me. I won't be coming back for a while, I said firmly to them and ended the call abruptly. Despite feeling a twinge of guilt, I threw myself into my work to overcome it. Seeing me suddenly working both day and night shifts, Sean called me aside. Jody, you've been working a lot lately. Is everything all right at home? Sean looked concerned. I'm fine. I'm living on my own now. I told Sean everything that had happened so far. To my surprise, Sean burst into laughter upon hearing how I was actively fighting back and offered me his full support. I was moved by how great of a boss he truly was. Time flies, and it had already been 5 years since I left home. There was no particular contact from the two of them. I assumed they were managing somehow. I was thoroughly enjoying my newfound freedom. Honestly, I didn't care about them anymore. They were out of my mind. I even started thinking casually about wanting a divorce. Then one day, my mobile phone rang. A bad feeling washed over me, and when I checked, it was from Dylan. Reluctantly, I decided to answer, knowing that if I didn't, Dylan would just keep calling. I'm the type to answer rather than repeat the pointless cycle. Hello, I called out to Dylan. As soon as he heard my voice, Dylan bluntly said, Nicholas is getting married, so come to the wedding. He called me after so long, and that was the first thing he said with a cold voice. After not speaking with his wife for 5 years, shouldn't he have started with words like, it's been a while, or how are you? Yet without such any initial greetings and speaking in a commanding tone from the start, Dylan is truly out of line. I had a sense that Dylan lacked social skills, but I never imagined he could be the type of man to display such rude behavior. It's not just a lack of social skills. He lacks common decency and the ability to be kind to others. How can he be so arrogant after all he and Nicholas did? I really don't understand. But if I don't take some action, I will continue to be looked down upon by both Dylan and Nicholas. I absolutely didn't want that. They are ungrateful. I remembered how, in my youth, I helped Dylan when he was being bullied. I worked multiple part-time jobs desperately to pay for Nicholas's tutoring fees. I managed all the household chores and made an effort to maintain good relations with our neighbors. It's likely that neither of them appreciated any of my actions. The numerous, terrible ways they had treated me made it clear, and the realization was a shocking wake-up call for me. They were taking me for granted. It must be so. Despite my hard work for both of them, to be treated this way is just too much. Who could ever have imagined such a situation? Should I just accept this and do nothing? No, that's not acceptable. The only one who can help me is me, myself. After much thought, I decided to attend Nicholas's wedding. I informed Dylan of my decision and we ended the call. After that, I received an email from Dylan. It contained a photo of a woman who appeared to be Nicholas's fiancée, but I chose to ignore it. Nicholas's fiancée was a young lady around the same age as Nicholas and quite charming. But what kind of job she had, her personality, how she met Nicholas, and what led them to start dating, about those details, I didn't ask anything. It wasn't out of stubbornness that I didn't ask. It wasn't out of spite. I simply didn't care anymore. It didn't matter who Nicholas was marrying. Perhaps I'm failing as Nicholas's mother, thinking it doesn't matter what happens to my own son and about Nicholas's wedding. It should be a happy occasion, but I couldn't bring myself to feel genuinely happy. The reason is I no longer have any affection for Nicholas, who ignores his own mother. Nicholas, who treated me so terribly without a second thought. From my perspective, Nicholas had become someone I could no longer trust. Yet I had decided to attend the wedding of someone I couldn't trust. I was starting to regret saying that I would attend the wedding. I had a part-time shift in the afternoon, so I got ready. The thought of having to attend Nicholas's wedding loomed over me, and I couldn't stop sighing. While cycling from home to the station, the strong wind messed up my carefully styled hair. By the time I reached the station, I was in a worse mood than ever. I went to work feeling gloomy. That day, Sean happened to be at the store and quickly noticed my mood. "You seem down. What's up?" "Well, my son is getting married." "That's great news. My daughter is getting married too. Look." Sean showed me a picture of his daughter, but when I saw it, I was shocked. "What?" "Jody, what's wrong?" "My son's fiancée is your daughter." "What?" On the day of the wedding, I headed to the venue. Dylan and Nicholas were surprised to see me. "What?" And there was a good reason for that. That's because I was sitting on the bride's side. Dylan grabbed my arm angrily. "You're supposed to be on the groom's side. What are you thinking, you fool?" "Ouch, let go of me!" Our argument caused a stir among the guests. Nicholas was glaring at me. Was he embarrassed? And Dylan still hadn't let go of my arm. I wished for someone to help me. Then Sean stepped in. "Jody is attending as a guest on the bride's side as per her own wish and my arrangement. Please, let go of her arm." "There's no way I'm letting go. Who are you to Jody? Did you manipulate her into this?" "Absolutely not. Her decision to leave home was all her own. It's understandable after what her beloved husband and son did to her." Sean interrupted Dylan's words, took the microphone, and ascended to the stage. And then he said the following. "Ladies and gentlemen, today's wedding is canceled. Of course, we'll return all the gifts you've brought, and feel free to eat the food on the tables." The guests, puzzled by Sean's announcement, "Why is the wedding canceled?" started asking questions. Sean explained the reason. "It's because the groom and his dad are scoundrels. They harassed the mom to the point that she had to leave the house. My daughter wasn't born to marry such a man. Therefore, we are canceling the wedding." The guests started to look coldly at Dylan and Nicholas. They briefly showed frustration, then Dylan, as if struck by a thought, began to retort. "You're being incredibly rude to me and Nicholas. You say Jody left home, but she left on her own. Why should we be blamed and the wedding canceled? Do you have any proof of what you're accusing us of? Yeah, why are we being treated as the bad guys? It's unfortunate, truly unfortunate. I initially thought just to cancel the wedding, but your horrible words have changed my mind. The engagement with my daughter is now dissolved." Dylan was visibly shocked. "What?" Nicholas collapsed to his knees, pale with shock. Sean, unfazed by their reaction, continued. "Let me introduce myself. I'm Sean, the CEO and president of A Group, and also the bride's father." A murmur went through the crowd. A Group? That famous restaurant company? That's really impressive. Such exclamations could be heard from the crowd, but Sean showed no sign of being swayed or impressed. He must be used to such remarks by now. "And I am also the former boss of Jody, the groom's mother. She has been a hard-working and valuable employee since my days as a manager. She is a crucial asset to our company." Sean winked at me. The guests turned their attention towards me. I could only manage an awkward smile. I've sometimes heard about her family situation. It was terrible. Let me tell you exactly what the groom and his dad did to her. Stop it. I'll sue you for defamation. Dylan and Nicholas tried to take the microphone from Sean and ascend the stage, but the guests stopped them, thwarting their attempt. Nicholas murmured, "It's over." Sean continued undeterred. First, they left the lunches Jody made untouched repeatedly. Normally, you would ask why, right? Jody did ask them, but instead of answering, they just ignored her and locked themselves in their rooms. The guest said, "They did that? That's terrible. Inhuman." There were sounds of loud booing from the audience. It's unbelievable. Even in the food industry, such behavior is inexcusable. But their misconduct didn't end there. There's more? The guests glared at Dylan and Nicholas. Next, even when Jody was sick with a high fever, they forced her to do the housework. Apparently, they couldn't do it themselves and couldn't function without Jody. Normally, they should have cared for her, but instead they woke her up and made her cook. Despite her efforts, they didn't thank her and even complained about the food. Dylan and Nicholas's faces turned red with shame. I am astounded that these two lack basic human decency. Ultimately, they started ignoring Jody. She tried every way to communicate, but they ignored her for a whole month. Can you believe it? "I'm sorry. Please forgive us." They covered their faces with their hands, apologizing, but Sean continued relentlessly. "Ignoring your loved ones for a month is unimaginable. I'm not lying. Jody and I have built solid trust through work. It's impossible she would lie to me. This is my evidence. Any objections from you two?" Unable to withstand the cold stares from the guests, Dylan and Nicholas started confessing why they harassed me. Their reasons were childish. Apparently, they were jealous of my social skills and began to see me as an annoyance. Hence the harassment. I was dumbfounded by such trivial reasons and sighed deeply. Later, I heard Nicholas's engagement was called off. It was a huge shock to him. "I'm done with love," apparently Nicholas declared. As for me, my divorce from Dylan was finalized and I was enjoying my newfound freedom. Additionally, Sean, grateful to me for helping with his daughter, gave me a raise. My new life was just beginning. I am simply looking forward, focused on the future.